Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Haunted House. My name's Ghost, and welcome back to another episode of History with Ghost. It's the early 1930s, and you're young and have dreams of becoming an author when you're older, living a happy life until you're forced to run from your home from a ruthless and evil government that takes control and murders anyone they deem lesser than them. Today, we're talking about Anne Frank, author and one of many Holocaust victims. Anne was born on the 12th of June 1929 in Frankfurt, Germany. Anne was born to Edith and Otto Frank. She had an older sister named Margot Betty Frank. Her and her family were Jews. She would grow up and live in Frankfurt, Germany for about 4 years. Her upbringing in Germany was great despite the issues the country had. Anne's parents loved to read and write. They were very focused on intellectual pursuits. They had a massive library in their home in Germany. They encouraged their children, including Anne, to read and write a lot as well. Because of this, Anne would eventually pick up journaling. Unemployment and poverty was really bad in Germany, especially in the 1930s. Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party capitalized on this crisis and ran in the 1933 election with the promise of eliminating the crisis, and as we all know, he won. People were desperate at the time and fell for his lies, but Anne's family didn't. As soon as Adolf was elected, Anne and her family moved to Amsterdam. Life in Amsterdam was great. Her father opened up two businesses called Opekta, which sold pectin, a gelatin agent for jam, and Petcon, which traded herbs and spices and salts. As for Anne's mother and sister, they would mostly stay at home though. Margot would attend school, and Edith would do housework and occasionally go to services. As for Anne herself, she would also go to school at the Montessori School, for, or what it is known as now, the Anne Frank's Sixth Monetary School, named in her honor. She excelled in school. Life was great for her and her family until May of 1940 when Nazi Germany invaded the Netherlands. Anne's father planned to leave the Netherlands with the family to the United States, but his application was never processed because the local US consulate building was destroyed by bombing from the Germans. Now, when they invaded, and Anne and her family didn't immediately go into hiding. They were surprisingly pretty calm, from what I could tell in my research. In July of 1941, Anne was filmed watching the wedding of her neighbors from the balcony of her home. It is the only film footage of Anne. Not long after, Anne would leave the Sixth Montessori School and joined the Jewish Lyceum, a Jewish secondary school in Amsterdam, which was mandatory for Jews. In June of 1942, Anne was given a red diary for her 13th birthday. She would name it Kitty. This would be the start of her journaling. She would almost immediately start writing in it, quote, "I hope I will be able to confide everything to you as I have never been able to confide in anyone, and I hope you will be a great source of comfort and support." End quote. A month later, Anne and her family would go into hiding after Anne's sister Margaret was called up to a concentration camp. A lot of people will think that people were forced into these camps against their will. While that is not completely wrong, a lot of people were actually coerced and tricked until going to these camps. Anne's sister didn't fall for it, though. Where Anne and her family would hide was the second floor of her father's business in a secret hiding spot behind a revolving bookcase which Anne's father made. Very smart of him. The spot they would hide in and live in for the next 2 years was extremely small, and living in it was rough. Anne and her family had to keep very quiet so they weren't heard from the Nazis. Now, we ain't gonna go through every little event that happened during their hiding, but there is one thing I do want to go through in this video. While in hiding, Anne would start writing more in her diary. I want to go through some of the stuff she said in her diary during this time. This first one just shows how bad stuff was. This one was around a year after they went into hiding. She says, quote, "Terrible things are happening outside. Poor helpless people are being dragged out of their homes. Families are torn apart. Men, women, and children are separated. Children come home from school to find that their parents have disappeared." End quote. Just horrible stuff. Another one she wrote that I really love is this one. It says, quote, "It's really a wonder that I haven't dropped all my ideals because they seem so absurd and impossible to carry out. Yet I keep them because in spite of everything, I still believe that people are really good at heart." End quote. In spite of everything, every day having to think and worry about being captured by these monsters, she kept strong. I adore her. Another quote in her diary I like is this one. Quote, "I can shake off everything as I write. My sorrows disappear, my courage is reborn." End quote. Strongest kid ever, I swear. Also another one, another quote which I find funny and just too real. Quote, "Paper has more patience than people." End quote. It's so true. Um, those are the quotes from her diary I found the most interesting. There is thousands more had gone through, but we'd be here forever, and I want to keep this video kind of short because I know this video is going to be long. 2 years after going into hiding, on the 4th of August 1944, at around 10:30 a.m., at least 3 police officers led by SS officer Karl Silberbauer walked into Otto Frank's business. The SS officer proceeded to point a revolver at one of the store clerks. The clerk, at gunpoint, was forced to take him to the manager of Otto's business at the time, and they questioned the manager for a while, and the manager was forced, also at gunpoint, to go through all levels of the building with the SS officer searching the place for stuff they deemed illegal. The manager was forced to open crates and tell them what was inside. The officers checked under tables, they checked everywhere until they got to the second floor and found the bookcase. At first, they didn't notice anything, but eventually they realized it wasn't a normal bookcase. Not long after, Anne and her family were found and arrested. Her and her family were all sent to Auschwitz originally, but once they got there, they were split up. Anne's mother and father stayed in Auschwitz. Meanwhile, herself and her sister were sent to the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. Concentration camps were horrific. They were disgusting. They had minimal rations. People barely ate. They were overcrowded and unhygienic. There was disease everywhere. Any disease you can think of, they had it. The people in these camps were also overworked. They were forced to work making stuff for the war effort. Because of this, Edith Frank and mother would die from exhaustion on the 6th of January 1945. A month later, Anne Frank and her sister would die from typhus. Both Auschwitz, where Edith was held, and Bergen-Belsen, where Anne and Margot was held, would be liberated weeks later. As for Otto Frank, he survived Auschwitz and was liberated with the rest. Not long after, he found out about his family. He was devastated by their loss. It took a while for him to recover. He returned to Amsterdam and to his business, where he learned that one of his co-workers had saved Anne's diary. He was struck by grief. So bad, he stated that he didn't have the strength to read it. After a while, he eventually did read it, and he was touched by her strength. As I said in the beginning of this video, Anne had dreams of becoming an author. It was her life goal. Otto Frank fulfilled her wish and published the diary in 1947, 2 years after her death. The diary has been translated into multiple languages since then. Otto Frank would die 40 years later in 1980. The burials of Edith, Margot, and Anne are not known. They were buried in unmarked graves in Bergen-Belsen and Auschwitz. But Otto Frank is buried at the Friedhof am Hornil Cemetery in Basel, Switzerland. I wanted to cover this story not only because it touched me, but because right now there is many wars going on in the world. This story is a reminder of what war can do. But also, the very same country that liberated Bergen-Belsen and Auschwitz all those years ago is right now committing the same crimes Germany did. And it needs to stop. But yeah, if you liked this video, please give it a like and a follow, and I'll see you next time. Bye.